Imagine waking up every day in a world where the very essence of who you are is twisted, where your pain is ignored and your struggle is painted as hatred. Now imagine the moment you discover the truth, a truth that shatters the lies, ignites your spirit, and calls you to action. This is the journey many of us are on, a journey to uncover the reality of Palestine, of Islam, and of the resilience that has defied every effort to erase it. Today, we will break through the walls of deception, embrace the truth, and stand together for justice. For decades, the global media has played a critical role in shaping public opinion about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But instead of providing balanced coverage, many mainstream outlets have consistently delivered narratives that dehumanize Palestinians and portray them as the primary source of violence. Headlines focus on rockets fired rather than the decades of occupation, the military checkpoints, the illegal settlements, and the bomb, doubt homes. News segments often start when Israel responds, not when Palestinians suffer. This selective storytelling paints a distorted image of the oppressed as the aggressors. When a Palestinian child throws a rock in the face of tanks, he's called a militant. But when a warplane drops bombs on apartment buildings, it's labeled a security operation. Words like clashes are used to describe situations where one side is heavily armed and the other is defending with nothing but courage and despair. This manipulation of language is not accidental. It is carefully curated to justify political agendas and maintain public support for oppressive systems. Media bias also comes from who controls the narrative. Western media corporations are often influenced by powerful lobby groups and governments that have long-standing alliances with Israel. This influence filters what gets reported and how it's reported. Photos of Palestinian suffering are rare. Palestinian voices are sidelined. Meanwhile, Israeli perspectives are centered, normalized, and rarely questioned. Even social media, a space once celebrated for freedom of speech, has become complicit. Posts exposing Israeli crimes are shadow, banned, or removed. Algorithms favor one side. Journalists who report the truth are often silenced, fired, or worse. The result is a global population trained to look at a people under siege and see them as a threat. The real question is, who benefits from this illusion? The roots of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict do not begin with recent headlines or the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. They reach back into the era of colonialism, empire, and broken promises. After the fall of the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I, the British Empire took control of Palestine under the British Mandate. During this period, the British made conflicting promises to both Arabs and Jews, fueling tension and division in the land. One of the most critical moments came in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, in which Britain supported the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, a land where the native Arab population was already living, farming, and building families. This marked the beginning of a deliberate plan of settlement and displacement, one backed by a colonial mindset that prioritized European geopolitical interests over the rights and lives of indigenous people. The Zionist movement, which sought to create a Jewish state, found support not because of moral righteousness, but because it aligned with Western colonial strategies. European powers saw the Middle East as a region to be controlled and divided, not respected. Palestine became another victim of the imperial mapmakers. From that point forward, Palestinians were pushed out of their homes, villages were destroyed, and entire communities were erased from history. The events of 1948, known to Palestinians as the Nakba, or catastrophe, saw more than 700,000 Palestinians forcibly expelled from their land. Their homes became someone else's. Their keys, memories, and birthrights were turned into museum pieces or rubble. The story of Palestine is not just about conflict, it is a story of colonization. It is about an indigenous people who were invaded, displaced, and demonized, all while the world watched maps change and justice dissolve. In the language of power, resistance by the oppressed is often branded as terrorism. This has been the case with Palestinians for generations. When a people are stripped of their land, rights, homes, and dignity, and they rise to resist, their struggle is not terrorism, it is survival. But global powers, media outlets, and political systems often refuse to make that distinction. Palestinians have lived under military occupation, endured blockades, and faced systemic violence for decades. They have been subjected to airstrikes, illegal settlements, arbitrary arrests, and collective punishment. In this environment, resistance becomes a natural response. But instead of being seen through the lens of justice, Palestinian resistance is quickly labeled as extremism or militancy. This double standard is deeply rooted in a world that often favors the narrative of the powerful over the voice of the oppressed. When nations in the West fought against Nazi occupation, they were called heroes. When South Africans rose against apartheid, they were eventually praised. When Ukraine resists invasion, it is honored on global stages. But when Palestinians resist decades of occupation, they are demonized. The inconsistency is not just political, it's moral. This branding of resistance as terrorism is not accidental. It serves to delegitimize Palestinian voices and justify military responses. It reduces a complex, painful struggle into a caricature of violence, stripping away the humanity, the grief, and the deep historical roots behind the resistance. It allows the world to turn away, to dismiss the cries of the oppressed, and to maintain an unjust status quo. Every act of resistance comes from a place of loss of a homeland, of family, of freedom. It is not about hatred, it is about hope. It is about a people who refuse to be erased, even when the world refuses to understand their pain. Dehumanization is one of the most powerful weapons used against the Palestinian people. It doesn't require bombs or bullets. It works through language, imagery, and silence. It's the subtle way Palestinians are portrayed as threats rather than human beings, as statistics rather than sons, daughters, fathers, and mothers. It's the way a child's death is reported as a number instead of a name. It's in the way their grief is framed as rage, and their cries for justice are dismissed as incitement. This process begins early. In media, Palestinians are often shown in moments of anger, throwing rocks, or running through chaos, but rarely in moments of love, culture, or faith. You don't see their weddings, their poetry, their family dinners, their acts of compassion. You don't see the father shielding his child from falling rubble or the mother whispering prayers in the dark. You're only shown one side, the one that justifies their suffering. In politics, this tactic makes it easier to support policies that destroy their homes or deny them basic rights. A faceless enemy doesn't deserve sympathy. A demonized people can be bombed without outrage. The goal is to make the world forget that Palestinians are human, full of dreams, fears, and sacred worth like anyone else. Language plays a critical role here. Words like human shields, terror nest, or collateral damage are used to strip away moral responsibility. No one has to feel guilty about the death of someone they've been trained not to care about. Even in education systems, Palestinian history is erased or distorted. Their stories are buried, their heritage unacknowledged, and without their story, their humanity is the next casualty. This is not just a war on land, it's a war on identity, on dignity, and on truth itself. The suffering of Palestinians is not happening in isolation. It is being funded, armed, and politically protected by powerful Western nations. Countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and others have played a central role in the ongoing oppression of the Palestinian people. These governments speak the language of human rights and democracy, but when it comes to Palestine, those values are often suspended. The United States alone provides billions of dollars in military aid to Israel every year. That money funds the weapons, the bombs, the drones, and the technology used to surveil and suppress Palestinians. It supports an apartheid system where one group lives with full rights while the other lives under checkpoints, curfews, and constant threat. And yet, this support continues without serious accountability or condition. In the United Nations, the U.S., and its allies have repeatedly used their veto power to block resolutions condemning illegal settlements, ceasefire violations, and war crimes. Instead of holding Israel accountable for its actions, they shield it from international law. This protection gives a green light to continue the occupation and aggression with impunity. Western complicity is not just military or political, it's cultural. Media narratives, school curricula, and public discourse often reflect deep-rooted bias. Palestinian voices are excluded from debates, their suffering minimized, and their resistance criminalized. Meanwhile, Israeli narratives are amplified and sanitized to appeal to Western audiences. This dynamic is not just about politics. It's about power. It reveals which lives are valued and which are expendable. It shows how deeply systemic injustice runs when morality is shaped not by truth, but by interests. Western nations could choose to be a force for justice, but as long as for years Islam has been portrayed in the West through a lens of fear and suspicion. From Hollywood movies to news broadcasts, the dominant image of a Muslim has often been linked to violence, extremism, or backwardness. This misrepresentation has not only distorted how people view the religion, it has also fueled the dehumanization of Muslims globally, especially Palestinians, for whom Islam is not just a faith, but a source of identity, strength, and resilience. After major geopolitical events like 9/11, Islam was unfairly blamed for the actions of a few, while the teachings of the religion were rarely explored with honesty. Words like jihad were twisted into definitions of terrorism when in truth the term refers to a personal and spiritual struggle for righteousness. The Prophet Muhammad, who preached mercy, justice, and compassion, was reduced to a caricature by those who never studied his life or his message. This campaign of misrepresentation serves political purposes. It allows governments to justify wars in Muslim majority countries, surveillance of Muslim communities, and the suppression of Muslim voices. When Islam is seen as the enemy, the public is easier to convince that Palestinian Muslims under occupation are a threat, not victims. But behind the headlines and stereotypes is a faith rooted in peace, discipline, and profound spiritual beauty. Islam teaches that killing one innocent soul is like killing all of humanity. It calls for the protection of the weak, the pursuit of truth, and the obligation to stand against oppression. These values are not threats, they are solutions. For many who take the time to learn, Islam becomes a light in the middle of darkness, a system of truth in a world full of lies. But that truth is often buried under layers of propaganda, fear, and ignorance. For those willing to look beyond the noise, discovering the real Islam is like stepping into a world that was hidden in plain sight. It is not the Islam of headlines or fear, fear-mongering news segments. It's the Islam of hospitality, of unshakable patience, of the mother waking her child for dawn prayer, of the father bowing his head in gratitude even as his home lies in rubble. It's the Islam of unity, dignity, and faith in the face of unbearable loss. Palestinian Muslims embody this Islam daily. Despite the checkpoints, the bombings, the displacement, they pray, they smile. They teach their children love and scripture, not hate. They feed strangers. They care for elders. Their culture is rich with poetry, song, and stories that are deeply woven with Islamic teachings of hope and justice. It's a spirituality that doesn't break under pressure, it shines brighter. What many outsiders begin to see, once they strip away the propaganda, is that Islam has been misrepresented not because it is dangerous, but because it is powerful. Its call to justice, to stand against tyranny, threatens systems built on oppression. Its clarity about life, death, purpose, and morality offers answers in a world drowning in confusion. Learning about Islam through the eyes of Palestinians forces a reckoning. You see people who have lost everything but still believe. You hear Quranic verses on the lips of children who have seen war. You witness the power of a faith that can't be colonized even if the land is. It's not the Islam of stereotypes. It's the Islam of truth, of mercy, of unwavering submission to the Creator. And once that truth begins to enter the heart, it challenges everything. It replaces fear with understanding, confusion with clarity, and apathy with purpose. The journey toward truth often begins with discomfort. For many, that awakening starts with a question. Something doesn't feel right. The media says one thing, but your heart whispers another. You hear Palestinians called terrorists, yet you see mothers burying children, fathers clinging to rubble, and youth refusing to surrender their identity. You start digging. You read, you listen, and slowly, the cracks in the narrative begin to widen. The deeper you go, the more you realize this isn't just about politics. It's about justice, about truth, about the soul. You begin to see how power works, how history has been manipulated, how victims have been recast as villains, and in that process, something unexpected happens. The more you understand Palestine, the more you understand Islam. The more you understand Islam, the more your heart starts to change. It's not about conversion at first, it's about clarity. You begin to see how Islam teaches endurance in hardship, trust in God during chaos, and the duty to stand up against injustice, even when the world turns its back. You see how Palestinians pray after their homes are destroyed. You hear verses from the Quran that speak of divine justice, of patience, of peace in the storm, and you start to feel it deeply. That's when the shift begins. What started as sympathy becomes solidarity. What began as curiosity becomes conviction. You realize the lies weren't just about people. They were about a faith, a truth that's been hidden under layers of politics, racism, and fear. And one day, without even planning it, you find yourself saying what you never imagined you'd say. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger, not because of pressure, not because of trends, but because the truth lit something inside you that lies could never reach. There is a profound power in truth, a power that shakes the very foundations of our beliefs and challenges the structures we have come to accept. The truth, when uncovered, is not always comfortable. It doesn't always fit neatly into the narratives we've been taught or the world, views we've held for years. But once that truth enters your heart, it demands to be acknowledged, and it forces you to act. For many, the truth about Palestine is a wake-up call, a revelation that upends everything they thought they knew about the conflict. The truth reveals that the Palestinian people are not terrorists. They are human beings struggling for their basic rights. It uncovers the reality of occupation, of systematic violence, and of the endless cycle of suffering imposed upon an entire population. This truth stands in stark contrast to the dehumanizing narratives pushed by mainstream media and political powers. Once you see the truth, it becomes impossible to ignore. It lingers in your mind, challenges your conscience, and demands a response. You can no longer turn away when you witness injustice. You can no longer accept the lies that have been fed to you. The truth brings clarity and purpose, and with it comes a sense of responsibility to speak out, to educate, to fight for justice. But the truth does more than challenge the external world. It transforms the person who embraces it. It awakens a sense of empathy, of solidarity, of duty. It calls you to a higher moral ground and asks you to live in alignment with what is right, not what is convenient. It forces you to confront your own biases, to unlearn the lies you've absorbed, and to build a world you grounded in justice, humanity, and truth. When truth is revealed, it cannot be unseen. It shifts your perspective, alters your actions, and ultimately changes your life. Around the world, a global shift is taking place, a movement toward truth, justice, and a deeper understanding of the struggles faced by oppressed communities, particularly the Palestinians. The change is not just political or ideological. It is a moral awakening that is spreading far beyond the borders of Palestine itself. More and more people are refusing to accept the one-sided narratives and are seeking out the reality that has been obscured for so long. Social media platforms have played a significant role in this shift. With the rise of grassroots movements and independent journalists, the stories of Palestinians are reaching new audiences. These platforms have allowed people to hear directly from those who have lived through the occupation and conflict, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers of the media. Videos, testimonials, and first-hand accounts have pierced through the propaganda and exposed the truth in ways that mainstream outlets have failed to do. This shift is also happening in education, where a new generation is learning to critically engage with the history of the conflict. They are questioning the narratives they were taught, challenging the biases in their textbooks, and seeking out alternative perspectives. It's not just about understanding the Palestinian struggle, it's about understanding the interconnectedness of all global struggles for justice, freedom, and dignity. Moreover, this awakening is fostering solidarity across cultures and borders. People are starting to see that the Palestinian fight for freedom is not isolated. It is part of a broader global movement for human rights. It is linked to the fight against colonialism, apartheid, and systemic racism. As more people recognize the importance of standing with Palestinians, the global community is united in the pursuit of a more just and equitable world. This shift represents hope. It represents a collective realization that truth has a powerful way of uniting people, driving change, and challenging the status quo. It is a force that cannot be ignored. The truth about Palestine, Islam, and the struggles of the oppressed cannot remain hidden any longer. We must rise above the lies and dehumanization that have shaped global narratives for so long. The awakening to truth is not just a personal journey, but a collective responsibility. It is a call to stand for justice, to reject false narratives, and to support those who have been silenced. May we all be part of this global shift toward a world built on truth, peace, and humanity. Good luck on your journey, and thank you for seeking truth and justice. Stay strong and steadfast.